Chapter 4. Hotspot. Perhaps the thorniest subject involving the Antarctic Peninsula is global warming. According to climate records, the Antarctic Peninsula is one of 3 places on the planet that have seen the sharpest rise in temperatures in recent years. The other 2 are the Yukon's Mackenzie Basin and central eastern Siberia. Temperatures on the Antarctic Peninsula have risen 3 degrees centigrade since the 1970s, says Eugene Domak, a professor of environmental science at Hamilton College who has been conducting research in Antarctica for 5 decades. That's one of the fastest rates of temperature increase anywhere in the world, he says. A now famous hypothesis put forth by Susan Solomon, an atmospheric chemist for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, explains that much of the temperature increase seen in the peninsula is a result of ozone depletion, a human-induced process blamed widely on chlorofluorocarbons. Solomon's work led to a near-global ban on CFCs in 1987, but the polar ozone holes still exist, and peninsular warming, as part of the overall global warming trend, is only compounded by the constant addition of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. Domak, the Hamilton professor, is currently working on a project funded by the National Science Foundation that studies the effects of the breakup of the Larsen Ice Shelf system on the peninsula's east coast. Staup's group is skiing the northern part of the peninsula's west coast, but much of the Larsen system lies a mere 50 miles to the east. It's an exciting place to study in detail, Domak says, explaining that the unprecedented breakup of the Larsen system and consequent sediment deposition over the last 10 years has wreaked monumental havoc with seafloor ecosystems. In North America, we think of the effect of global warming in terms of pine trees retreating up into the mountains and deciduous forests moving to higher latitudes, he says. This shift in the marine ecosystem we've seen on the peninsula is of a much more fundamental nature. It's as if all the trees here in North America were suddenly replaced by giant mushrooms. One might question the wisdom of visiting such an ecologically dynamic and fragile place in diesel-burning cruise ships. And the young Antarctic tourism industry has grown explosively since Swedish-American Lars-Erik Lindblad led the first group of tourists there in 1966. When the International Association of Antarctic Tour Operators began keeping records during 1992 and 93, a total of 6,704 seaborne and airborne tourists put ashore. By 2008-2009, that number had grown to 27,206. So why would an environmentally conscious outfitter like Staup bring such a large group to ski here? Yes, these trips have a huge carbon footprint, says Staup, so we have to make a difference in a way that makes sense. That's why my trips have the educational component. Those planes and ships will make the trip there whether or not my clients are on board. I want to be an ambassador for this beautiful place, and bring people there so they can be ambassadors too. Domak agrees. He doesn't think the tourism industry alone can generate a footprint large enough to adversely affect the peninsula's ecosystems. He explains that tourism is well regulated and that tour operators, who sell their trips as educational, environmentally respectful trips, are their own best policing agents, and the relatively high price of a cruise to Antarctica, coupled with the continent's remoteness, limits tourist numbers. I think that if it can be kept to a minimum, Domak says, the more people that see this beautiful continent, the better off we are as a global citizenry. So I'm all in favor of tourism.